Kristin Stampini, and congratulations on getting through the inspection process. Mark and I want to congratulate you to going through the next step. So now what we're really waiting for is the appraisal. The appraisal usually is ordered after all inspections are completed and accepted, and the appraisal period can, on average, take up to 2 weeks, okay, to perform and get back. During the appraisal process, Mark is usually going to try to do everything he can to be at that appraisal to make sure there are no issues. Depending on the appraiser, there can, especially in our market today, there can be issues on the appraisal. So what happens if there are? A lot of the time, the negotiations have to start between the buyer and the seller. So Mark usually tries to get the buyer to come up on the purchase price, even though the home didn't appraise, if that is the problem. Many times the buyer will agree to come up some, but what ends up happening, depending on the loan type or depending on how much money the buyer has, etc., that may or may not happen. But Mark does everything in his power to try to get the agent and the buyer to come up if there isn't an appraisal issue. So what happens if usually if the buyer doesn't come up, usually what has to happen is the seller is going to have to come down to the appraised value, or is going to have to put the home back on the market to try to get another offer that is either not contingent upon the appraisal or that is willing to negotiate if there isn't an appraisal issue. And depending on the banks and depending on the appraisers, the appraisal may come back different with different buyers, just so you know. Everybody looks at different things. I mean, they have guidelines, but we definitely see appraisals come back sometimes higher with certain appraisers than others. Now, we are not allowed after the appraiser to go to the appraisers directly to talk to them. Sometimes what we are allowed to do, if it's way off of what we think that it should be appraised at, we are able to put together a rebuttal. So Mark is really, really good at fighting for the appraisal for you every step of the way and every way that he can. So we do everything possible to make sure that we move to the next step after this appraisal. But that is kind of what to expect during the appraisal process. The other thing is the buyer is still working to get anything that might show up that they have to work on as far as getting 100% approved for the home. So during this process, the appraisal, the inspection, and then anything else that might come up during that process is taken care of during this time, so we can go to a happy closing. So I just kind of wanted to let you know what can happen during the appraisals. During this market today, we do see sometimes there are some issues, but we usually can handle them. Okay? Anyways, thank you. Happy appraisal, and we will see you in the next segment of Going to Closing.